Hey everybody, welcome to episode 99 of the Is That Normal podcast, and we're back.
Yes. So we fell into a little bit of a hole for a month or so there, but man, we are back on track and excited to share some great ideas and resources today and on into the future. So, yeah.
But before we get to that, as I mentioned, this is episode 99, which means that we are one episode away from our 100th episode, and man,
I know, yeah,
it's crazy.
And I mean, it seems crazy to me. I mean, that's not like an astronomical number, but still for us, when we started this, back in 2019, who would have thought, that we'd be able to keep it up and or where it was going to go and what it was going to become. And so, man, we're looking forward to the next episode where we're going to share 100 things everybody needs to know about teenagers and young adults. And so, in preparation for this episode and really beyond that, we want to continue hearing from you, our listeners, on the things that have been meaningful to you, have connected well, have helped you. And so we really want you to email us at connect@isthatnormal.org or comment wherever you're watching or listening to this episode at, and just tell us some of your favorite episodes, some of your favorite ideas, some of the most helpful resources, and things that you want to continue to hear more about, because we want to continue bringing the most helpful content to our listeners and our families.
And speaking of resources, we've got another one today. We've got a book called For the Faith of the Next Generation that we're going to talk a little bit about today, and it's just another great tool to help us guide our children in their journey towards Jesus.
Well, welcome to the Is That Normal podcast. And, Randall and I have been working in youth ministry now, in one way or another, really like 20-ish some years. And most of that has been right at our home church, Calvary Chapel Free Will Baptist Church in Buffalo, Missouri. Mm-hmm. And anytime someone asks me where I'm at or what I'm doing, and I spit all of that out of my mouth, lots of questions immediately come up. How about you, Randall? Do you have some questions?
I get questions of where is that? What does that mean? Are you part of Calvary Chapel, the denomination?
Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
And just lots of random questions. But also when I try to describe where our church is physically located, even within Buffalo, people are like,
no idea. Even if they're from the area.
Yes. They're like, I don't know where that's at.
Yeah. Let me draw you a map. Yeah. And similar some things for me, if I forget to say Missouri, they're like, you're from New York? I'm like, no.
Nope.
Buffalo, Missouri. And then obviously the next statement is, never heard of that. No. I'm like, I know. And I've also been asked, like, that is an enormous name for your church. Have you ever thought about shortening that? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, locally, we're just doing as Calvary Chapel. Mm-hmm. But really, another big question I get asked all the time in that is, what in the world is a Free Will Baptist? That last question I want to just talk about for just a minute, because Free Will Baptists are a smaller Baptist denomination. There's actually, I think, 160 different flavors of Baptists in the United States alone. And so we're one of those flavors of Baptist. And our denomination goes all the way back to the 1700s, where it kind of started with some essentials that this group really wanted to hold on to. And now it's made up of about 200,000 Jesus followers, which organized in about 2,500 churches in the United States. We also have churches all around the world as well. Honestly, until I started attending Calvary Chapel, I really didn't know and hadn't heard much about what a Free Will Baptist was. I knew what a Baptist was, or I thought I did, but I didn't know a distinctive of a Free Will Baptist. But over the last 20 years, I've discovered a lot of wonderful things about that group, and we'll put a link to our national website in the notes on this. So if you want to explore a little bit more about what a Free Will Baptist is, lots of great information, exciting things going on. But one of the most wonderful things I've found out is that Free Will Baptists have their own publishing house, Randall House Publishers. They publish curriculum and content and publish books for ministry resources and helps, and they have a fantastic library catalog of great resources.
Yeah, and they're headed up by and led by Dr. Ron Hunter, who we've had on this podcast before, and he's awesome. He is really, really great, and I've gotten to interact with him and hear him speak several times, and they just do a great job. And he's part of the group that's helped develop the D6 philosophy, which we've used here at church. We've talked about even on this podcast a couple of times at least, which comes from Deuteronomy 6 and is really just centered around family ministry.
Yeah, and really they were some of the leaders of this kind of forward-thinking movement. Not that I guess it's kind of backward thinking because it's the way it should have been and the way it used to be. And in some ways, in the last 100 years or so, kind of it's not been as emphasized much. The fact that discipleship starts at home, and that the church and the family have to partner to raise up the next generation of faith, and how that has to be a multi-generational movement. And so they've really pioneered a lot of really cool stuff. And so because of that, I'm always watching for what they're coming out with next, because they always have great resources that right are along the heartbeat of what we talk about and like to share and like to implement on this podcast and in our ministries. And so when I saw earlier this back in the summer, a new book was coming out, For the Faith of the Next Generation, a resource for ministry leaders and parents, I was like, generations, parents, ministry leaders, that sounds like something we want. So
Buzzwords.
I immediately grabbed a title because I knew it was going to be exactly something that we'd want to share about.
Yeah. So what is the overall message of the book?
Well, it's actually aimed a lot more towards children's ministry, elementary aged kids and families. And a lot of that's because the author, Julie Kurtz, has spent over 30 years in children's ministry as a children's director, running children's ministry curriculum developers, conferences for families and children's ministers. And so the goal and the advice is similar to other resources that we've read and talked about and used on this, but it's really dialed in at how do you start this at a younger age, which I think is a really good thought process. But the end game is that discipleship starts and ends at the home. So church and families need to be in partnership.
Yeah. So what are some of her ideas on kind of what that partnership between family and church looks like?
Yeah, as you go through her book, you're going to see her talk about the importance of several things. And a lot of it's going to revolve around family health and having a collective faith at home and at church. So she talks a lot about parents and the importance of a strong marriage. And so because of that, she shares some ideas on how parents can make sure that that's happening, and some ideas on how churches can support and reinforce those concepts as well. Because if we have strong relationships at the top, that's going to foster healthier relationships as we go down into our children. She also talks a lot about worship, how churches need to create an environment where families can worship together at church and at home. And again, this is just a real theme we've seen as we've explored ministry, as we've read other resources, as we've watched what the best practices are for discipleship. Is we need our families connecting together at church, and we really need our families implementing worship at home. And so she's got some great ideas on there. She also talks about using whatever curriculum your church is teaching to encourage and develop a heart-based approach to discipleship.
So what do you mean by heart-based approach?
Yeah, so it goes back to this concept, we've talked about this in some prior episodes, of behavior management versus heart change. And so, so I can modify my behavior in front of certain people, for a variety of reasons. I can do it because I don't want to get in trouble. I can do it because I want their approval, or I can do it because I'm trying to get my way. And, a lot of times our parenting styles, our, authority administration styles are a lot about what you do. Make sure you don't do this thing. Don't do that thing. Don't do this thing. Make sure you're doing this thing. And so kids are really good at learning how to play that game of like showing that they're doing the right thing when they're in front of you, whether that's really what they believe or own or not. And so she talks about, digging beyond that layer. We want to see a heart change. We want to see ownership of faith and belief. And so that goes a lot further than, don't smoke and chew and go with girls who do. And so she talks a lot about those things in there, how to get to the root of that. She recommends changing from looking at behaviors to encouraging life skills to develop. And so instead of me going like, these are the do's and don'ts, like, what are the things I want to see my child develop? And how do we build that from the ground up? She also suggests changing language from punishment to discipline. Because when we start talking about discipline, that's a lot more about self-control than it is a consequence of an action. And so that's going to focus on future success. It's going to teach me better ways to do things, and it's a positive outlook rather than a negative outlook.
Yeah. So, which we love, but better and positive. So,
Yes, that's
what are some of the strengths of the book?
Yeah, it's lots of great research. Every chapter she's pulling lots of research from other like experts and very experienced people, very clearly naming them, giving you a bullet point at the end of other books or resources to look at. So plenty of recommended resources. It's good for just about anybody involved with young people. It'd be great for a pastor to read, a youth leader to read, a children worker to read, a parent to read, a grandparent to read. It's really got a wide, very practical application base there. Mm-hmm.
Good. Any negatives?
Like I said, for our audience, it's aimed at younger kids, and so if your kids are teens or young adults, which is kind of a lot of our target here, you might read it and go, "Oh, I wish I'd done that back then," or "I wish I'd done that." And don't fall into that trap. That's we are where we are, and we evaluate and move forward. But I think it still has a lot of good groundwork thing that still applies, and she talks about teens and adolescents in here, so it's not just about younger kids, but and also the practicals are a little less pronounced. Some of the books we've read is like, and here's a bullet point list of exactly how you can use this, and she gives a lot more concepts and then recommended resources for you to dive deeper into. So it's going to take a little bit more work, I think, coming out of this to apply some of the things that she's talking about. Great concepts, great reinforcement of other things we've suggested, but you might have to do a little bit more homework to figure out some ways to apply it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, last thoughts.
Really, just another great tool. It gives me encouragement to revisit other concepts. I read through it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was from this book, or this is something I learned here, and it's refreshed my memory on some really good things. And then just, for like broad scope, I encourage our listeners to go check out Randall House. We'll have their website linked as well. And just look through their catalog. There's great things for parents, great things for kids to use. Their app is fantastic. Got lots of family devotion and worship ideas on it. So just a great resource that you need to tap into.
Yeah. They've got some really, really quality stuff. And so as we wrap up, our two takeaways are: first, check out the book for the faith of the next generation, and check out that Randall House website and what all they have to offer. And then the next thing is to join us in 2 weeks for our 100th episode. Be abnormal.